The wind howled through the canyon, a dry rasp that carried the scent of dust and danger. In the shadowed cabin, Lila stood by the hearth, her deerskin dress clinging to her full curves, damp from the storm outside. The firelight danced across her bronze skin, catching the swell of her breasts where the torn neckline gaped, revealing soft flesh that rose and fell with her steady breath. Caleb Thorne froze in the doorway, his coat slick with rain, eyes locked on her. She turned, her dark gaze meeting his, bold, unyielding, a spark of something forbidden flickering between them. Her fingers grazed the edge of the table, slow, deliberate, as if daring him to step closer. His jaw tightened, the weight of years alone pressing against the heat rising in his chest. A woman like her didn't end up in a man's cabin by chance. Not in this wild land. Not with that look in her eyes. What had he let into his life? And could he send her away before he lost himself to her entirely? If this pulls you in, hit that like button. Drop a comment letting us know where you're reading from. And subscribe to Ride Along for more. The cabin door slammed shut, cutting off the storm's howl. Rain dripped from Caleb Thorne's coat, pooling on the rough pine floor. Lila lay on his bed, her deerskin dress soaked, clinging to the full curve of her hips, the torn neckline gaping to reveal the soft swell of her breasts, rising with shallow breaths. Firelight danced across her bronze skin, her dark hair spilling over the pillow like a raven's wing. Caleb's chest tightened. He'd pulled her from the river's claws, her body cold and heavy in his arms. But now, she was here, alive, filling his empty space with a warmth he'd forgotten. He turned to the hearth, striking a match with unsteady hands. The flame caught slow, like his thoughts, tangled in her presence. He didn't ask her name. Not yet. Her eyes cracked open, dark and sharp, watching him. No fear, just caution. Her lips parted, no sound. Caleb knelt by the bed, checking her ankle, swollen, not broken. His fingers brushed her skin, warm now, and he pulled back fast, like he'd touched something forbidden. "You're safe," he said, voice low, steady. She blinked, slow, and he felt a pull, like the river's current tugging at him. He limped to the chair across the room, sat, hands clasped tight. The fire popped, the only sound between them. Dawn came gray, the storm gone, leaving a damp chill. Caleb woke, his bad knee throbbing. Lila sat up, his flannel shirt draped over her, too big, slipping off one shoulder to show the smooth curve of her chest. She tested her leg, wincing. He crossed the room, motioned her to stay. "Not yet," he said. Her eyes held his, searching, like she saw the scars he carried inside. He handed her a tin cup of water, their fingers brushing, a spark he pushed down. She drank slow, lips wet, and handed it back. "Lila," she said, soft, accented. "Apache." He tapped his chest. "Caleb." He stepped outside to tend the horse, needing air. The canyon stretched wide, silent, but for the wind hissing through dry grass. Lila wasn't just a stranger. She'd been left to die, hands tied, temple bruised, thrown to the river. His jaw clenched. He knew men who'd do that, their eyes cold as iron. He'd faced them in the war, in dusty saloons. Back inside, Layla was sweeping, limping but stubborn, the shirt cinched at her waist, accentuating the roundness of her hips as she moved. "You don't need to," he said. She kept sweeping, claiming her place. Days fell into a quiet rhythm. Lila mended her dress, needle flashing in the firelight, her fingers steady, strong. Caleb fixed fences, checked cattle, but his mind stayed on her. She cooked beans, tore cornbread, her movements sure, like she belonged. One afternoon she knelt by the hearth, grinding chamomile and sumac, her dress riding up to show the smooth line of her thigh, firm and bronzed. "For your leg," she said, catching his glance. He nodded, took the tea, their hands brushing longer this time. Her warmth lingered in his fingers. He looked away, sipped. It eased the ache. Nights were harder. Caleb sat in his chair, watching her sleep, her chest rising under his shirt. Claire and Ruth haunted him, lost to fever, buried while he was broken from the war. Their memory was a stone in his chest, heavy as the rifle by the door. Lila was different, not soft like Claire, but fierce, alive, stirring something he'd buried. He wanted to ask who'd hurt her, who'd left her in that river, but her silence held him back. She wasn't ready to tell. He wasn't ready to feel what she woke in him. One evening, Lila stood to stoke the fire, her dress loose, slipping to reveal the full shape of her breasts as she bent forward, firelight catching her curves. Caleb's breath hitched. She turned, catching his stare, and didn't look away. Her eyes held his, bold, a challenge. He stood, slow, crossing the room. His hand hovered near her arm. "You don't owe me anything," he said, voice rough. She stepped closer, her breath warm against his neck, pulling him in. "I know," she whispered, lips grazing his ear, sending a shiver through him. His hand found her waist, fingers tracing the curve through thin fabric. The air thickened, heavy with want. But he stopped, heart pounding. Claire's laugh echoed in his mind, the weight of her grave pulling him back. "I can't," he said, voice breaking. Lila's eyes softened, understanding. She stepped back, her silhouette framed by the fire, leaving the space between them heavy with unspoken desire. Lila's shadow moved across the cabin wall, her silhouette sharp against the fire's glow. She knelt by the hearth, stirring a pot of beans, her deerskin dress pulling tight across her hips as she leaned forward. Caleb stood in the doorway, his hands still dirty from fixing the east fence, watching her. The air felt heavy, not just from the heat of the fire, but from the unspoken pull between them. He'd stopped himself that night, pushed her away when her breath grazed his ear, but the want hadn't faded. It simmered, low and constant, like the coals under her pot. He stepped inside, brushing past her to wash his hands in the basin. Her scent, pine, ash, and something wild, hit him hard. She didn't look up, but her movement slowed, deliberate, like she felt him too. "You eat yet?" he asked, voice gruff. She shook her head, spoon still in hand. He tore a piece of cornbread, set it beside her. Their fingers brushed, her skin warm, and he lingered a moment too long before pulling back. She glanced at him, eyes dark, unreadable, but not cold. Something in that look made his chest tighten, made him want to ask what she was running from. Days had passed since the river, and Lila was stronger now. Her ankle held her weight, though she still limped. She moved through the cabin with purpose, folding blankets, mending his old shirts with a needle she'd found. One morning she stood outside, barefoot in the frost, her dress hitched to her knees, the fabric clinging to her thighs as she carried a bucket of water. Her breath steamed in the cold, her body steady despite the chill. Caleb watched from the porch, his coffee forgotten. She was no fragile thing, but the bruise on her temple, fading now, told a story she hadn't shared. He wanted to know it, but he didn't press. Not yet. He rode out to check the cattle, leaving her with the rifle by the door. Not that he thought she'd use it on him, but the canyon wasn't safe. Someone had left her to drown, and they might come looking. The thought gnawed at him as he rode, the wind biting his face. Back at the cabin, Lila was on the porch, skinning a rabbit with a small knife, her hands steady, blood staining her fingers, her movements sure, practiced. "You done that before?" he asked. She nodded, not looking up. "Many times." That night, the air turned heavy, a storm brewing beyond the ridge. Thunder rumbled, low and distant. Lila sat by the fire, braiding her hair, the flannel shirt loose around her frame, slipping to reveal the soft curve of her chest. Caleb cleaned his rifle at the table, trying to focus, but her presence pulled at him. She stood, crossed to him, and leaned close to set a cup of tea on the table. Her hair brushed his arm, her breath warm against his cheek. "You move stiff," she said, voice low. "Storm makes it worse." He nodded, caught by the way her lips curved, full and close. His hand twitched, wanting to touch her, but he gripped the rifle instead. The storm broke, rain hammering the roof. Lila moved to the window, her silhouette framed against the lightning's flash, the shirt clinging to her waist, accentuating the roundness of her hips. Caleb stood, drawn to her. He stopped close, too close, his chest brushing her back. She didn't move, didn't pull away. His hand found her shoulder, fingers grazing her skin, sliding down her arm. Her breath hitched, and she turned, her eyes locking on his. Bold, wanting. He leaned in, lips hovering near hers, the heat of her body pulling him under. His fingers slid to her waist, tracing the curve, the fabric bunching under his touch. She pressed closer, her breasts soft against his chest, her lips parting. A crack of thunder shook the cabin, and Caleb froze. His hand dropped, his eyes falling to the wooden box on the shelf, the one holding Claire's ring. Her soft laugh, Ruth's small hand in his, flooded back. Guilt clawed at him, sharp as a blade. He stepped back, breath ragged. Lila's eyes softened, not with hurt, but with understanding. She touched his arm, light, then stepped away, her silhouette fading into the shadows. The rain pounded harder, but it couldn't drown out the ache in his chest, the want he couldn't shake, the fear of letting go of the past. Morning came, the storm gone, leaving mud and quiet. Lila was outside, tending the fire pit. Caleb watched, his hands still, the weight of last night heavy between them. She didn't speak of it, didn't need to. Her presence was enough, steady, unyielding. He joined her, splitting logs, the rhythm calming his mind. But the question lingered. Who was she running from? And would they come for her? The sun bled red across the canyon, casting long shadows. Caleb swung his axe, splitting wood, sweat dampening his shirt. Lila stood nearby, tying kindling. Her thighs, strong and bronzed, shifted with each move, her body steady, alive. Caleb's eyes lingered, then flicked away. The memory of her breath against his neck from the storm lingered, a fire he couldn't douse. Claire's shadow still held him, but Lila was breaking through, her presence a pulse he couldn't ignore. Inside, Lila set the table, her hair loose, brushing her waist. She tore cornbread, her fingers quick, the flannel shirt slipping to reveal the soft swell of her breasts. Caleb sat, his knees stiff, watching her. The air felt tight, like a drawn bowstring. "You don't talk much," he said, breaking the silence. She looked up, eyes dark, steady. "Words don't always help," she said, voice low, accented. She set a plate before him, her hand brushing his, deliberate. His pulse quickened, but he ate slow, tasting only the heat of her nearness. She spoke, unprompted. "My people wanted me to marry. A man I didn't choose. I said no." Her eyes traced the table's grain. "They tied my hands, left me by the river." Caleb's jaw tightened. The bruise on her temple, nearly gone, sparked a rage he hadn't felt in years. "Who?" he asked, voice hard. She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. I'm here." Her gaze met his, bold, and something shifted. She wasn't just a woman he'd saved. She was a flame, burning through his walls. Night fell, the cabin dim, lit by the hearth's glow. Lila stood by the fire, untying her dress's cord. The fabric loosened, falling open to reveal the full curve of her breasts, her skin glowing in the firelight. Caleb's breath caught. He stood, drawn to her, boots heavy on the floor. She turned, eyes locking on his, unafraid, wanting. He stopped close, his hand grazing her cheek, her skin warm, soft. She leaned into it, her breath hitching. His fingers slid to her neck, tracing her jaw, then down, brushing the edge of her dress where her breasts pressed against it. She stepped closer, her body brushing his, heat radiating. He kissed her, slow, lips hungry, tasting the wildness in her. She kissed back, hands sliding up his chest, unbuttoning his shirt, fingers grazing his scars. His lips moved to her neck, kissing the pulse there, her skin warm, alive. Her dress slipped further, baring her shoulders, the full shape of her breasts, free in the firelight. His hands roamed, cupping her curves, fingers tracing the soft skin of her hips. She pressed closer, breath ragged, and whispered against his ear. "I'm wet, but it's not from the river anymore." Her voice, low and raw, sent a jolt through him. Caleb's heart pounded, his body taut with want. He lifted her onto the table, her legs parting, the dress riding up to reveal the smooth lines of her thighs. His hands slid under the fabric, feeling the heat of her skin, her curves yielding under his touch. She pulled him closer, lips brushing his ear, her breath hot. His fingers unbuttoned her dress fully, letting it fall, her body bare, glowing in the firelight. She tugged his shirt off, her hands exploring his chest, the hard lines of his frame. They moved together, slow, deliberate, their bodies intertwining. They made love, not rushed, but deep, her lips parting under his, her breath mingling with his in the quiet. The firelight danced across her skin, her curves soft and fierce, their connection a silent vow. The fire cracked softly while their bodies moved in rhythm. Slow, deep, soft gasps, swallowed by the dark. After, they lay on the bed, Lila's head on his chest, her hair spilling across his skin, her body warm against his. Her fingers traced his scars, gentle, knowing. He held her, the weight of Claire's memory still there, but quieter now, softened by Lila's presence. No words passed, only the steady rhythm of their breathing, the fire's crackle fading. Dawn brought a heavy sky, rain looming. Caleb rode out, checking the herd, Lila's touch still burning in him. He didn't see the riders until they were close. 6 Apache on horseback, faces hard, led by an elder. A young man beside him, eyes cold, stared at the cabin. Lila stepped outside, her dress tied tight, stance firm, but her hand trembled. Caleb dismounted, hand near his gun. The elder spoke, voice like gravel. "You saved her. She's yours by our law." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "She's no one's," he said, stepping in front of Lila. She touched his arm, steadying him, her eyes fierce. "I choose," she said, voice clear, in Apache, then English. The young man's face darkened, but the elder nodded, tossing a feathered bracelet to the ground. They rode off, the young man's glance a promise of trouble. Caleb turned to Lila, her face unreadable. "They'll come back," she said, voice low. He nodded, the canyon feeling smaller, the danger closer. But so was she. The canyon lay quiet, clouds heavy with the threat of rain. Caleb stood on the porch, his breath fogging in the chill, eyes locked on the ridge where the Apache had vanished. Lila's words, "They'll come back," cut like a spur, sharp and unyielding. She moved behind him, hauling a bucket of water, her steps steady through the mud. The memory of her body against his last night, her whisper, "I'm wet," burned in him, a fire he couldn't douse. He gripped the rail, steadying himself. She was his now, not just a stranger he'd saved. Inside, Lila knelt by the hearth, grinding herbs, her hair loose, brushing her waist. His flannel shirt hung loose on her, unbuttoned low, a glimpse of her skin catching the firelight. Caleb watched, his heart caught between her warmth and Claire's shadow. He'd buried his wife and daughter, their graves a weight he'd carried alone. Lila's fierce spirit was breaking that chain. He set a log on the fire, voice low. "You don't need to work so hard." She looked up, eyes steady. "I want to," she said, her accent soft, claiming her place. A storm broke at dusk, rain lashing the cabin, wind tearing at the shutters. Caleb and Lila fought it outside, securing the fence, mud slick underfoot. Her dress clung to her, soaked, her movements fierce as she drove a stake into the ground. Caleb worked beside her, their shoulders brushing, her heat cutting through the cold. They moved as one, no words needed, their trust a silent vow. Back inside, they shed their wet coats, her shirt damp, clinging faintly. She caught his glance, held it, a spark passing between them. Night deepened, the storm raging. Lila sat by the fire, drying her hair, her skin glowing in the hearth's light. Caleb sat across, cleaning his rifle, his hands steady but his mind on her. She crossed to him, bare feet soft on the floor. "You carry too much," she said, voice low, fingers brushing his hand. He looked up, caught by her dark, knowing eyes. He pulled her close, her warmth steady, yielding. They didn't rush. His lips found hers, slow, tasting the rain on her skin. Her hands roamed his chest, unbuttoning his shirt, fingers tracing his scars. He kissed her neck, her pulse quick under his lips, her breath hitching. Her shirt fell open, baring her curves, her breasts full in the firelight. His hands cupped them, gentle, then slid to her hips, pulling her onto his lap. She moved with him, her body soft but fierce, their connection deeper than the night before. They made love again, slow, deliberate, her breath mingling with his, her lips parting in a quiet moan. The storm roared outside, but inside they were all that mattered. Morning came, the rain gone, leaving a quiet world. Lila stood in the garden, planting seeds, her dress loose, her movements sure. But peace shattered, hooves thundered, a dozen Apache riders cresting the ridge, dust choking the air. The young man from before led them, his eyes wild, a rifle raised, flanked by warriors with drawn bows. He shouted in Apache, then English, voice venomous. "She was mine. You stole her." Lila stepped forward, her stance unyielding, voice clear. "I chose him." The young man spurred his horse charging, rifle aimed at Caleb. Caleb dove, tackling Lila to the ground as a shot cracked, splintering the fence. He drew his revolver, firing back, grazing the young man's arm. The elder roared, halting the warriors, but the young man lunged again, knife flashing, aiming for Lila. Caleb surged forward, wrestling him down, the blade grazing his shoulder, blood seeping through his shirt. Lila grabbed a shovel, swinging it hard, knocking the young man back. The elder barked an order, warriors seizing the young man, dragging him away. "She's free," the elder said, voice like stone, tossing a feathered bracelet to the ground. The riders retreated, the young man's glare a vow of vengeance. Caleb pulled Lila to her feet, her hand tight in his, her breath fast but steady. Blood trickled down his arm, but he didn't care. The canyon held its breath, danger still thick in the air. He'd fought for land, for survival. Now it was for her, for their child, for the life they'd built. The canyon held its breath, dust still settling from the Apache's retreat. Caleb stood, blood seeping from the gash on his shoulder, his revolver heavy in his hand. Lila's hand gripped his arm, her touch steady, grounding him. Her eyes, dark and fierce, scanned the ridge where the young man's glare had burned, a promise of vengeance lingering like smoke. The elder's words, "She's free," echoed, but the air felt thick, the danger not fully gone. Caleb pulled Delilah close, her warmth a shield against the cold fear in his chest. She was his, not by law or force, but by choice, and he'd fight for her, for their child, for the life they'd carved from this wild land. They returned to the cabin, the door creaking open, a faint light spilling from the hearth. Lila moved to the fire, her dress loose, her silhouette glowing as she tore cloth to bind his wound. Her fingers worked quick, gentle, brushing his skin, each touch a quiet vow. Caleb watched her, his heart heavy with the weight of Claire and Ruth, but lighter now. Their graves were part of him, but Lila was his present, her strength a fire that warmed the empty spaces. He caught her hand, held it, her pulse strong under his fingers. "I ain't whole," he said, voice rough, "but I'm yours." Her lips curved, a rare smile, soft but fierce. "And I'm yours," she whispered, her accent wrapping the words like a song. Dawn broke, the sky clear, the canyon stretching wide. Lila stood in the garden, planting seeds, her dress swaying as she knelt, her movements sure, tied to the earth. Her hand rested on her belly, their child a promise growing within her. Caleb joined her, his boots crunching on the frost, his hand covering hers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the life they'd made. The feathered bracelet, gifted by the elder, gleamed on her wrist, a symbol of her freedom, their bond. He saw their future, a daughter maybe, riding horses across the plains, her laugh like Lila's, bold and free. The thought softened the ache of his past, Claire's memory now a quiet hum, not a chain. But the ridge wasn't empty. A lone rider appeared, not the young man, but another, his posture tense, watching. Caleb's hand went to his gun, instinct sharp, but Lila's touch stopped him. "Not today," she said, voice low, steady. He nodded, trusting her. The rider turned, vanishing into the haze, a reminder that peace was fragile in this land. Caleb looked at Lila, her face lit by the first rays of sun, her eyes bright with defiance and hope. They'd face whatever came, together. He'd been a man of war, of loss, but with her, he was something more, a man building a home. The cabin stood behind them, its door open, no longer a place of solitude, but a haven they'd filled. The garden stretched before them, seeds planted, roots taking hold. Caleb's hand tightened on Lila's, her warmth a promise stronger than any threat. The canyon sprawled wide, its red cliffs catching the light, a world both cruel and beautiful. They stood there, side by side, the sun rising, a single ray cutting through the dawn, illuminating the bracelet on her wrist. Their hands joined, their future unwritten but chosen. If this story stirred you, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us what you'd fight for in this wild land, and subscribe to hear more tales of love and danger. A super thanks keeps these stories burning bright, like a fire in the canyon night.